Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Thursday announced stimulus measures to aid job creation and boost the key real estate and infrastructure sectors under the government's Atmanirbhar Bharat 3.0 package aimed at rescuing the economy out of a historic contraction. A number of indicators are showing that recovery is clearly happening in the economy. The strong recovery is based on the unrelenting reforms that the government has brought in a systemic manner, the finance minister said in a media briefing, asserting that the latest set of measures take the overall monetary and fiscal support for the economy to 29.8 lakh crore rupees. The finance minister said it is equivalent to 15% of the country's GDP. The announcements come at a time when economists have called for the need for further impetus to aid a revival in an economy battered by the world's biggest lockdown to curb the spread of COVID-19. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the stimulus package announced by the Finance Minister. Joining me on the program today are Dilip Chinoy, Secretary General, FICCI, Shubhamay Bhattacharjee, Consulting Editor of the Business Standard, and A.S. Bail, former Principal Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, Mr. Chinoy, let me start the program with you first. Let's hear, what were your key takeaways really as far as the Finance Minister's stimulus package is concerned.
So, if you look at the package, Frank, I think there are multiple elements to it. The first thing, it is multi-sectoral. It covers different sectors. And if you can take the liberty of actually including the production-linked incentive scheme that was announced yesterday and also announced earlier in the numbers, you will see that it is focusing at not only aspirational sectors, but job employment sectors like textiles and food processing, but also key technology-led sectors that we need to be present in. So the first, it is multi-sectoral in its approach because it did construction, infrastructure, and the 26 sectors that were identified in the Kamath committee report as the stressed sectors. So this is multi-sectoral. The second thing, it impacts different segments of society, whether it is a rural, unorganized worker who needs Manrega or the PM, Kalyan scheme, or the farmer through the agriculture, the fertilizer subsidy, or the middle income household, person in the housing sector. And very importantly, there was a kind of a, people need to understand the ESI scheme a bit more in perspective. While when you read or when you hear the message from the finance minister, you say this is an incentive for additional people employed. Now, additional people are employed means that you can't count the people who've been retrenched. So it kind of provides an overall umbrella of job security, etc., going forward, and then looks at exporters, through the enhanced outlay in the Exim Bank. So there are different segments of society that are also being impacted by this. And the third fact is, Frank, that a lot of this is cash. It is not. It's actually outlay in the budget, although the PLI scheme may be expanded over 5 years. And most of them will have a multiplier impact on the economy as we go forward.
Absolutely. All right, Shubhamay, from a journalist's point of view, so how would you look at this stimulus package? What were the key takeaways for you?
One, first of all, it's wide, as Dilip said. It's a very wide package. And coming also at a time when this package is necessary or rather I would say has come at a time when it's able to really help the economy. There have been plenty of discussion around that when the government should provide the stimulus. If you look at it now, the government's first stimulus in April, May, that was meant to basically tide over a crisis. Then, as the economy has gradually come out of the lockdown, the extent of problems in the economy has become apparent to the government. Based on that, there have been intermediate steps earlier on. Like there was one in early October for government employees. There was one meant even earlier to that. those were meant to address select issues, demand revival, and so on. This one is a complete package. And the interesting thing is, it comes at a time when the economy has actually started showing how much it will be capable of in this year. So, what is the ballast that will be required by the government to be able to push the economy up? So, therefore, I would say two things. First of all, the size of the stimulus, which is very, very substantial. But much more than that, what is important is the timing. The timing comes just when, as the finance minister was pointing out, that indicators have started showing, including, for instance, today's Moody's report, which shows that India's GDP is going to be actually slightly better. But these are, very significant numbers that are coming in. And just at that time, when the government puts in its bit to push the economy in through short term, through medium term, and through long-term measures, then that provides a very robust, what I might call, productivity support for the economy to grow further ahead. So I would say that you should read both, not only the size, but also the timing. I think the timing has been very correct this time.
Okay. So since we're talking about indicators, Mr. Bal, let's talk about the indicators now and analyze and understand what are the key indicators telling us as far as where our economy is at.
See, as we all know, the October indicators, be it the purchasing managers index or the GST collections having crossed that wonder 1 lakh crore mark, and the electricity consumption, the railway freight, all these high frequency indicators are showing an upbeat. And this was to be expected because, as we all know, India went through one of the strongest lockdowns in the world, and it was but natural that economic life was affected, and the economy is now sort of getting back into shape. And this is the right time where this incentive packages come in and will give a big boost to the Indian economy. If I may, I'd just like to add one bit here. The biggest takeaway for me in this package is that rather than being just sector agnostic and providing a good industrial environment or income tax or fiscal package, we've gone ahead and selected 10 champion sectors. Earlier, the production linked incentive was for 3 sectors, and we've gone ahead and now selected 10 champion sectors: auto and auto components, advanced cell, textiles, food, pharma. The government is sort of sticking its neck out, and we are saying, no, now we will not just stand from afar and just provide broad incentive. We will choose the sectors where we want to provide incentive. This is a big change, sort of departure over the last couple of years. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Dilip Chennai, taking the discussion forward now, of course, the government is trying its best, trying to pump in as much money as possible in various sectors and, across the board to try and, spur up the economy and try to bring about some kind of change after the record contraction that we saw in, earlier this year. But, as far as industry is concerned, what shape is it in to contribute to the economy and also kind of reciprocate what the public sector or the government is doing?
I think, Frank, the biggest challenge in different segments of industry was really the cash flow. So there were industries that were actually doing well. If you look at certain elements of FMCG or pharma, etc., and the essential commodities, they are back to 80, 85, and some to 100% of pre-COVID levels. In the infrastructure space also, because sectors like steel, etc., are also very close to pre-COVID levels. There were segments of industry, particularly the services sector, right, which was greatly impacted and was not there as well as the pre-COVID, and therefore in this kind of a situation, and they required cash really, and they required guaranteed loan, etc. Extending the emergency credit guarantee loan scheme to those 26 sectors actually enables those sectors also to get cash to contribute to the revival of the economy. The other aspect is that many of the companies, right, who were wanting to expand and to look at other aspects but did not have access to capital or found it uncompetitive. So I mean, literally not the new investments that we're looking at, but the companies that are invested in India. In the 13 sectors, because 3 were announced earlier and 10 have been announced, and there's one overlap in pharmaceuticals. But in those sectors, there's a huge incentive now to expand capacity, to increase scale. And when you increase scale, you become competitive. So you've already seen it happen in the mobile space. You've seen it happening in the electronics component space. You're seeing it happening in the API and the key starting materials space, that people are already there. There's also been very interesting component in this, which was a 900 crores to R&D in vaccine. That is a very strategic investment, working with the existing people on how to fund them and how to give them incentives so that the overall cost of the vaccine is reduced, and also we can enhance production going forward and get it to market further. So industry is partnering with government. In fact, most of the PLI schemes, it is a partnership with industry. In some industry sectors are actually given written commitments that they will do. I'm aware of one in the air conditioning sector, and I'm sure Anand is also aware of that one. And people are really looking at, we're looking at positivity in this festive time, and it could actually be termed as a Diwali bonanza for the entire economy, and it'll lift spirits. That is the most important thing. It will communicate that the government is listening, the government is willing to do it, and Sukumoy talked about the timing of it. One is the timing when the economy opens up, but the other is timing of Diwali and others. And a lot of people now who have fear of losing their job and were not spending will now say that our companies are actually encouraged to keep us there and get more people. The propensity to spend also may increase. So I think there are different ways that people will react. And for the real estate and construction sector and for the home buyer, it is huge. And if you see the impact, what could happen, the state governments follow suit, like Maharashtra reduced the stamp duty and they got record number of sales and registrations. So the states can also actually add to this and, change the whole outlook going forward.
Absolutely. Shubhoy Bhattacharya, talking about the festive season and talking about the, the timing and all those other aspects, is there also a concern or a fear that, post the festive season that we might see a lull once again?
That is a genuine fear. And let's step back at this moment to understand the policy under which this stimulus has come. So what you realize is that this is one about job creation. The finance minister has clearly said upfront that companies, if they are recruiting new employees, they will get a subsidy from the government as far as their EPF dues are concerned. It's actually a major commitment, because if you are saying that jobs are going to be expanding, there are lots of new companies which are planning to send out a contract letters, then obviously that is going to be something that the government has taken on as an open-ended support for the for job creation. That also applies for the expansion of the MGNREGA, where there has been extra money. So the emphasis here is on job creation. Now, why is that job creation important? This is to answer your question, that if you look at the recent data that has come out, there has been a major push from the household sector towards savings. Savings has risen considerably. Now, this answers the question which had been raised earlier, that should the government just give out cash dole? The answer is no, it would not have helped. Cash dole would have simply led people to hoard that money. It would not have led to creation of demand in the economy. This one and the earlier projects which the government has taken on, the Atmanirbhar version 1, and this basically says that the government will be nudging companies, nudging the informal sector to create jobs, to create investment. And that will then help, as you said, ensure that the momentum stays beyond the festival season. Because if those are being created on a regular basis, then obviously demand conditions return to the market. This is much more significant and much more strenuous than having given out cash. But cash was something which obviously would not have helped in a year when everybody's fear psychosis was very high. So the government is actually taking the risk, but it is a well thought through risk, I would say, at this juncture. And it's actually showing that it is leading to demand creation in the economy. which is reflected in the different numbers that are coming up. Now, obviously, we'll have to see beyond the festival season, but my expectation is that all these measures essentially again do the same thing of making the job creation, which means demand creation, a long-lasting one.
Absolutely. All right. Yes, Bal, as far as job creation is concerned, I want to take this up also with you and take the discussion forward on that note, on the points that Shubhamoy has just made. Job creation is a major issue. It has been a major concern for a while now. Do you believe that the right kind of jobs can be created? Is it going to be sector specific? What do you see in the near future? Where are the jobs going to come from? And also, how important is skilling going to be?
See, if you look at the 10 champion sectors which have been enunciated in the production-linked incentive, as Dilip said, food products, textiles, auto components, they are labor-intensive sectors. So one of the main reasons they've been selected for the performance-linked incentives is the job creation capacity. And job creation is also being supported through incentives to the EPFO and ESIC. And all through in the industrial policy which is being worked out. Of course, we are embracing Industry 4.0, but we always agree that India can't just blindly accept Industry 4.0 with its Internet of Things and 3D technology. India will have to have a slew of products all across. We can have really highly capital intensive sectors, but we have to give a lot of importance to employment intensive sectors like handlooms, food products, textiles, auto components. It's always there on the radar of the government. So job creation is a very important it's a article of faith with the government, and it's reflected in the package here, in the Atmanirbhar package here.
Right. All right. Dilip Chinoy, going forward, what challenges do you see emerging? How do we tackle those challenges, and where do you believe our focus should be?
So if you can look at the whole challenges in the execution, right? So the first thing is that you saw the ELGS scheme of 3 lakh crores being announced. We actually expanded it because we could not do the 3 lakh crores. We could only do X amount. Although a lot of things happened, and execution means while it has to be both sides, right? So, how do you get a public-private partnership going in executing it? The second, example of execution I want to give is, the finance minister talked about the job portal, right? So we have people in rural areas who are working in urban centers, but they've gone back and they don't have jobs. And there are a lot of areas in urban and semi-urban areas where there are jobs but no people, right? So we have to actually, get that portal going, get that execution going, and the number of trains has to increase. From around over 18,000 trains, passenger trains that we're running, we are in substantially reduced numbers there. And even at this point of time, because till Chhath Puja, a lot of people won't move out, right? But we need to see this, post the festive season, people coming back to work. So, and the most important challenge is we should not get a fourth or fifth a third wave or a fourth wave of COVID, so that we have to maintain the mask wearing discipline, the distancing and the sanitization protocol. Because if that comes back and we have lockdowns or even localized lockdowns which disrupt the supply chain, that's going to impact us going forward. And if you look at the entire world order now, which and since a lot of the PLI schemes are dependent on exports, we need to actually ensure that our discussions with EU and the US and that side actually enable the exports to go, because the technical textiles, etc., will go to those markets, but food processing and etc. goes to the Arab states. So we'll have a new kind of a link with the economy. And the fact that the finance minister referred to the scheme run by MEA in the EXIM thing says there's close coordination there to look at how we take this forward. And the other real positive that could emerge, and I took this example earlier, is the states can link their incentives also to these sectors and to these areas. Then 1 + 1 will become 11 and not be 2. So how do we get this actually going forward is the challenge. And, we have to keep the sentiment and mood up, and maybe, some more money would be required in the ELGS scheme. And I'm sure, going forward, if the excise, if the GST collections continue to grow and there's some more headroom for the government, we'll see that also happen.
Absolutely. All right, Shubhamoy, so what's the best way forward? What are the sectors that we need to watch out for going forward, both from the positive point of view and from the negative point of view as well? And how do we look forward to the next 3 months?
Well, one of the things that the government is making it very clear, and this is, I look around broadly also to the geopolitical conditions in the world, that we will not be getting much of a support from the rest of the world. So the government is now, and that's why I say this timing has been very significant. It has come after the US election results have been announced. It has come after several, both Europe and others have more or less said what they have to say in terms of the stimulus. So now the government is in a position to measure and to articulate what it needs to do for the different sectors, as Dilip was talking about, in terms of ensuring the support that is to be needed. So that's why it's a carefully crafted package. Now, within that package, as Anand was also saying, job creation obviously has been the big thing. The positive will be the sectors which obviously have been supported. So textiles is a new one, is a new addition, and it's a very important sector that has been added on. Food processing, again, these are new sectors that have been added on. Pharma, we already know it's a big one. It's already making its presence felt. But along with that, the negative, I would not say that there are any sectors or any places that is there. The problem, the negative is, as again they pointed out, is about the chances of the disease again sort of rearing its head up and pushing more expenditure on the government, especially the states, in terms of ensuring that they can place more money on forcing them to spend more money on health. That would obviously be the negative. But I would think that given the way the pandemic is sort of, spreading out has done it, I am slightly more sanguine at this stage that possibly we shall not be getting into that sort of a problem. But let's see how it stands out. Big challenge the government is now taking up is that of making exports rise. Both the Exim Bank support to expand the capital of Exim Bank, as well as measures to ensure that companies try to tap into the export market, are meant to ensure that India gets that additional export which is very necessary and which has been stagnating for a long time. It is something that is very necessary for Indian economy to really get pull out of, because exports in India has really not expanded much. Simultaneously, government is doing another thing, and this is which we hadn't had a chance to touch this time. This is on the infrastructure sector. I would say the support of 6,000 crore additional given to NIF on its debt operation is very important, because infrastructure creation will answer a lot of the blanks in the economic policy as of now.
Right.
Infrastructure is where demand creation, job growth, practically all the questions that we can raise gets solved. So by making NIF and the government and the finance minister made it very clear that it is NIIF which has to take the pole position in terms of meeting the infrastructure challenge or the infrastructure targets for the next 5 years. Which means that I would be expecting that number of which has been given for NIF is going to only expand, which is also good because we know that the banks will not be able to fill up this space. So instead of thinking about which is the institution, if NIIF is now clearly at the pole position and moves into infrastructure creation clearly, I think that is a very major phase change for the Indian economy. For global investors also, it becomes very clear that this is the agency, or this is the steering platform through which India is going to address its infrastructure deficit. So I think that is also a very major step going ahead. And I think I would expect, you are saying that there will be more stimulus. If there is, I think NIIF will be there in our conversation now more regularly over the next couple of years.
All right. And A.S. Bal, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Just to take up from what Subhamoy said, to look at the geopolitical scenario, this COVID pandemic has affected the global value chains very severely, and we have realized that we cannot depend on our sort of neighboring nation for products like pharmaceutical and mobile phones and components. So that is also a very important thinking which has gone into selection of our 10 products. That's why pharmaceutical products, advanced cell, chemical batteries, auto components have been chosen so that, you tweak your global value chains and you become more resilient as the very essence of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And secondly, you'd asked me earlier on the skilling aspect. Of course, skilling is a very important plank in the government policy, and reskilling, upskilling, and the National Council for Vocational Training has been set up, which sort of sets up accepted norms and stuff. And, and more feedback is taken from industry. Earlier, people used to just skill and let them loose on the fields, but not now. Now industry will sit with Dilip Chinoy and FICCI and see what the industry needs, and that kind of skilling now gets into the whole thing. So I see a very strong stimulus for the economy, and we are all sort of working in tandem, industry, government, the intelligentsia like Subhamoy and all. And I expect the Indian economy to bounce back and come out strongly.
Okay. All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the stimulus package couldn't have come at a better time, especially when we know what has happened in the US. We know which way Europe is going. And also, it's the festive season. So this is the best time to have come out with a package like this, is what the panelists are suggesting. Job creation has been an issue, and the package tries to address that particular problem as well by ensuring that the stimulus and the money goes to labor-intensive sectors so that the jobs are created there. Execution is where the challenge is really going to be. We need to ensure that we execute all these plans properly to ensure that we get the full benefit out of it. One thing that we need to watch out for going forward is we have to ensure that we don't see any more further waves of COVID-19, and that's where we as a community can come in, ensure that we follow COVID-19 appropriate behavior and support the entire ecosystem and ensure that we come out of this together. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.